Hey there, I'm Lance.
And I'm Jeremy.
And we are Hard to Master, where we take a look at games that are hard to master, such as
Terracotta Army by Board and Dice.
Terracotta Army.
Not an official T game.
No, it is not.
You know, if you follow Board and Dice and several other design team and the games that they do, this is not one of those T games, even though coincidentally starts with a T.
So I think I'm going to call it Terracotta Army for the rest of this video.
I'm going to call it Terracotta Army.
Okay.
So
me too.
It still starts with a T.
But this is going to be an action selection game in which you are going to be placing these really cool miniatures out here on this board strategically, hoping to do some area majority in this game and complete, I guess, placement patterns, if you will, to get the most points over the course of the game. There's a few moving parts with this one. It's probably, would you say, a medium-heavy game?
Yeah, I would say this is a medium-heavy game. Not uber complex.
No.
It's not going to be a true heavy game. It's a little bit lighter than the T series. But there's a lot to go into the scoring element at the end and placing of your miniatures that makes it feel more complex than it is at time, because you can get a lot of points in this region of the board.
A ton of points. And it's pretty easy to forget some things, especially that in-game scoring and how it works. You can get lost in the mix with trying to keep up with how all the stuff works throughout the course of the game and lose sight of some in-game bonuses. So it's a bit to keep up with. That's where the complexity in this game lies, I feel like. So we're going to go over just briefly. This is not going to be a how to play video, but we're going to briefly explain some of the mechanics, and then we'll share our thoughts on this game. And really, what the main thing you're going to be doing on your turn is you're going to be manipulating these dials up here. If you pay money, if you have money to be able to pay to do that, you're going to be able to turn these one little notch clockwise on this upper wheel or counterclockwise on this middle wheel. The lower ring does not move. It's printed on the board, so don't think you've got a third ring here that you can manipulate with. But you're going to be using your workers. So this is a worker placement, action selection kind of mechanic, because once somebody goes there, nobody else will be able to go there unless they have a big guy. What are these called? Artisans? Yeah. And they can go there and be able to take that action as well. And essentially what you're getting this combination of 3 abilities. And you're going to do these in order from the inner ring, middle ring, to the outer ring. And depending on what combination of 3 icons you've selected for yourself, that's what you're going to be doing this turn. And you're going to have a number of meeples to work with that's going to be dependent upon how many players you're playing in that game.
And it's easy to remember, your inner ring here is going to focus on actually creating these sculptures that are going to go into the Terracotta Army. It's also going to allow you to wet your dry clay, because a main resource in this game is clay, and it will either be dry or wet, and it has to stay that way unless you wet it, or at the end of the round it dries out, because you cannot keep it wet. Very cool thing, and we'll talk more about that later in our thoughts on that. But you can either wet clay, you can create a sculpture, or you're going to gain coins, clay, or that's how you would create an artisan meeple. It would replace the smaller meeple that you put there. So this one would come into play, this one would be removed from the game. The middle ring is going to be involving gaining coins or clay as well, but more than likely it's going to have to deal with these specialists that you're going to be able to hire and learn from, and basically use them throughout the game because you have hired them to help you. In addition to that, there is a turn order space that you can get there. If you didn't want to do those actions, you could negate it. Like, say you don't have the clay to create a sculpture, then you could just take a coin or 1 wet clay in place of that. The outer ring has to deal with your tokens. So you'll have 1 of each type of token in front of you. They all start inactive. And as you go there, you could ready that weapon, or you could spin the weapon and a coin amount to come over here and place one of these specialist miniatures out on the board, which will do different things. So that's kind of what's happening on up over here. As you build them, you will place the dried out clay. You'll place one in the quadrant to where you'd place your meeple. So if Lance had come up here and built one, then one dry clay would go there, the rest would go to the supply.
So these are going to fill up with dry clay throughout the course of the game, and there's going to be actions that you can take that allow you to gain the clay that are on these huts throughout the course of the game. So you do want to watch out how these are building up and maybe utilize that so that you can gain yourself some dry clay that you can wet later on to be able to use to make these statues. So really, this is going to be used every turn, every round, and the other segments of the board are going to be used depending upon what icons you've selected for that particular action with your meeple for that turn. So I think it would probably be best to cover this part of the board first and then hit these two parts next. So Jeremy, why don't you talk about what's going on here with this grid?
So this is going to be the part of the board where you're actually going to be placing these figures with the base of your color and placing it onto the board in a certain spot that you want. You really want to plan for a couple things. We have each round of scoring is going to have one of these tiles that you're going to randomly select at the beginning of the game. There are 12 to choose from, so each game can be different. It could have to deal with which quadrant of the board. This little black triangle tells you which way this token is going to face. So in this game, we would be looking at the halberd miniatures. You would also have this top upper left quadrant, that not including the middle rows and column, just these 12 spaces here. You would have the middle section for this round would be scored any wet or dry clay, and then coins. So placing these miniatures out in this area is very important because you want to be thinking about, for instance, these three, not these two, but these three, you want to be thinking about that when you're placing up here. But you also have these emperors, which are going to be moving, and they're going to be scoring. So every round, they're going to move one space on their own, and then you're going to score that row. So for instance, if we were right here, either we moved it by another way, or it's further on in the game, and you're scoring, well, whoever has the majority in that row or column, you're going to score each one individually, but say this row, if I'm the only one there, I'm going to gain 7 points. That's what this symbol is here. If there's somebody else in the row, and say I had 2 and somebody else had 1, well, I would get the majority. They would have presence, so they would gain 3. If we tie and there's no tiebreaker, then we would both get 3. There's nobody leading in that. Then we would score the other one the same way. So essentially, if you have the most in each row in that round, you could have 14 points, whereas if other people just have presence, they could gain 6 most for having presence in both. So placing to score off of the emperors is very important. Placing to score off the tokens are very important, the round tokens. But you also want to place them by similar types, because if you have swordsmen next to swordsmen, they create a grouping, and if it's just you there, you're only going to multiply that by 1 because there's 1 player color. But if Lance were to go there also and I was there, that's 2 player colors. So every miniature that we have of this type, the swordsman, is going to give us 2 points apiece as long as they're connected. If they're broken up by other miniatures, they don't score for that grouping. In addition to that, you're going to have a majority scoring in that sense as well. At the end of the game, whoever has the most of that type, so if we're talking the swordsman and I had 3, Lance had 1, they would each gain 2 apiece, so Lance would have 2 points, I would have 6 points, but in addition, I have 3, so I have the majority. I would gain an additional 5, Lance would gain an additional 2 for presence, just like in round 1 when you're scoring in those, and we can talk more about that in a minute. But so you want to worry about grouping things together, trying to play off of your opponents, but also trying to get in good with the Emperor so that you're in line to have a majority and gain additional points. And if you can't have a majority, just maybe putting someone there for that presence of getting some
sneaking
points.
in and getting some points. It's also important to note that each of these little statues, the different types, you have 4 different types, they also have little bonus abilities that you can do with them too, right?
Yeah, and so like we said, activating and readying these weapon tokens will not only allow you to possibly do a bonus action, but you could also use it for the specialist. So as a bonus actions, if I had this swordsman, the sword weapon token ready, I built a swordsman, I created him and placed him into the army, I would have the chance to flip this token over. Now it's unready. Now I will gain 1 point for doing that, but I also get to move this token, one of the Emperor tokens, forward or backward 1 space, and that could help get it in place to help me score more points.
Super powerful.
When we score that round. The halberd weapon token would allow me to move one of my figures in a straight line, up and down or left and right, until I reach another figure. Then it would have to stop, and you gain 3 points. The archer or bowman, that weapon token, if you take the bonus after placing an archer, you'll place that archer, face him at the direction you want to score, and then count how many spaces are from the archer to the open spaces between the archer and the figure that you're pointing at. Then you will gain that many points. And the last is the spearman. He actually gives you 2 coins and you get a point. So these can be used over here to do a bonus action after creating that type of statue. So I couldn't create a halberd and then flip over my sword statue or weapon token. That's not how that works. It has to be in line with the one you created. And when you build them, you're going to gain the points for where that is in the box. So the miniatures come in the box. They're going to be face down. You can flip them up so you can see them as you're placing them. But then, so if we already had one out, the 8's not available. If I decide to choose a halberd, I will get the 8 points. But if I choose to do another swordsman, well, now this one's worth 7. Yeah, so the initial points are lower, but later when you're grouping and stuff,
it's going to be worth it.
It could be worth it. Or if it's a certain round and you gain for majority or presence, then it may get you more points then. Or you may just want to really do the bonus token.
Yeah.
And so you want to place that type of statue so that you can activate the weapon token that you have ready. Because a lot of times you only have 1 or 2 ready, and it may not be the one that you want to activate, but it makes more sense to get the points versus flipping over the token. In addition, we said you could use these tokens with coins to place specialists out on the board. So the horse figure, if I were to flip over my sword weapon token and pay a coin, and the coin cost does go up after one has been created, so each additional statue of that type is going to cost an additional increase in coins. So after the first one's placed, the next one is going to cost 2 coins and that sword token be flipped. But by choosing this one, and I have painted the miniatures, and I will tell you, if you have a copy, doing a nice base coat, washing it, and then dry brushing it will make these things look fantastic.
Nice.
Check it out on my Instagram if you haven't seen, at Mo Minis Mo Problems. I mean, it drastically makes this game look so much better and more, just encapsulates you into the theme of this. But if I place the horse there, I'm going to put, I have to keep my figure where it was at, but I'm essentially, as long as there's space to put it there, I'm going to put it to where the open space is where my character is. He's going to go on this little platform. Now this figure is present in all 3 of these spaces, so that if the Emperor was here, well, now I'm connected still. It does not give you 3 figures there, and all of these specialist figures are neutral in scoring in a sense, but this would allow you to be into 3 spots, which could help block off spaces for other people, or it could help you in other scoring ways.
It also connects groups together too, so that if another swordsman were there, you would still have the connection.
And I may butcher some of the names of these people, but the prayer person is actually going to be next, and they actually on their base have 8 points pointing to the spaces around them. And you're going to look at majority for the end of game, and whoever has the most presents connected to them, most figures, is going to gain 8 points at the end. Every other person that has at least one presence is going to get 2 points, and that's for every one of these prayer warriors, I don't know, the priests, I guess, maybe, that are connected to that grouping. The next one has to do with your bow token, and this is a bowman. And this bowman is going to connect next to one of your figures. It makes it a tiebreaker for that figure. So if you had the same number of figures, now I would win the tie because it is connected. Also, at the end of the game, you're going to gain 2 points for that figure being connected to them. And that can help you with round scoring, it can help you with emperor scoring, and it can help you with group scoring at the end as well. Then you have your musicians, and the musicians have a 4-way path connected to them like a cross, and they're actually going to score 1 point for every figure in the row and column that they're connected to. So right now, this person would gain 1 person. If we had more figures, 2, 3, and then you would score this one as well.
And that's going to be every round.
Yeah, so every round are these figures. These figures help every round with just breaking ties, but they score at the end.
Yep.
Anytime you see this symbol with a bullseye or a circle next to the scoring is going to be end game, and you can see this token is scored whenever the emperor scores. You would score that token.
So what you have going over here on this side of the board, these are going to be your specialists that allow you to gain special actions that you can do so long as you have paid the cost to be able to put out one of your little guys out here. And I'm sure they have names. I'm drawing a blank on what these are called. But you're going to gain the specific one where you've put your worker at. So for this particular spot right here, if I put my worker here, I'm going to gain this particular
master.
That's what they're called.
Masters and the master token.
So I can place my master token here, and the first time I do this, it's going to cost me 1 coin. The next time that I do it, it will cost 2 coins, and I can do this up to 6 different times. Again, the cost increases each time I do it. But then I will gain this particular action that is associated with that master. In addition to those actions, which I'll cover them here very shortly, the 3 masters that are on this side of the board, they are going to give me a coin at the end of the round in preparation for the next round. So if I have masters tokens here, I will gain 3 coins as income for the next round. Whereas the 3 masters on this side of the board, they are going to give me wet clay. That clay, that's not right. They let me keep 1 wet clay and keep it wet for the next round. That's how it works. Normally your clay dries out. You have to turn it from your wet side to the dry side, but these guys will let you preserve up to 3 wet clay. So the actions that you're going to be doing at these different spots whenever you take that associated action on the action wheel up here, this guy up here, he's going to allow you to spend a number of coins equal to whatever round you're on in that particular part of the game. So for instance, if it's the first round, it's only 1 coin. If it's the 5th round, it would be 5 coins. And that's going to let you build one of the statues and put it out here on the map. Now you don't gain any other benefits, you don't gain points, you're not able to spend your tokens to do the special abilities, you're just getting a statue out on the board, which may not sound that great, but it may be really important for you if you're trying to get majority bonus or if you're trying to add into a grouping. Maybe there's other reasons as far as how this all shakes out for you to want to do that. And it's good to do it early on in the game because it's cheap, not so much at the end of the game because it will cost more. This action right here is going to let you do the inner ring 2 times. And so if you'll note, all of these 6 guys, these masters, they're going to be on this middle ring right here. And so whenever you're doing this guy right here, so he's right here, you would do this action first. So in this case, it's paying 2 wet clay to put out a statue. Then you would come here and you would get to do this ability if you have already got your guy there, or if you're paying to put out a master token. Then you'll come back and you'll get to do that again. So this is a really good combo to put out lots of statues, or to get lots of clay, or lots of money. This particular action right here, it's going to allow you to manipulate these Emperor tokens, moving them 1 or 2 spaces forward. And it's important to note that when you get to the end here, it's going to cycle back around.
But you can only move one, so you can't like move one, and then one another. You have to choose one Emperor, and then you can move it 1 space or 2, your choice. Forward, not backward.
This guy right here, he's very simple. He's just going to give you 3 wet clay. This particular action right here, this is the one we were talking about earlier that allows you to take the dry clay on 2 of these huts over here. Any 2, doesn't have to be adjacent or anything. And then this guy's very simple as well. He's going to let you turn all of your tokens, your different weapon tokens, over to the ready side.
If they're, But you may have some that are already flipped and you're just negating it. It's not like you can spend it and then reflip it.
So that's very simple, this aspect of the game. The rest of it, I feel like, is where the complexity of the game comes in, especially the whole placement of where you're trying to get your points. I feel like that's where the meat of this game lies. Manipulating this wheel is pretty easy to understand, but deciding what the best choice for yourself isn't always so straightforward. You do have to kind of look at this and analyze it a bit. But man, is this where the meat of the game really lies, in my opinion. Trying to figure out what is your best placement with these miniatures, which one should you build, when you should do them. I think that's where this game really lies. What do you think?
I think it really lies here. This is, to me, this is where, this is the meat of it for scoring. But this is the meat of it for what you can do and how you can manage what you have.
Sure.
Because a lot of times you want to turn it and you're 1 coin short.
Yeah.
A lot of times you want to build and you either have a lot of dry clay or you have one. You
don't have enough clay.
You don't have enough clay, yeah. I will say, sometimes you want to get the big meeples, but sometimes it's really hard to do it, or it feels like it would be a waste to do it at that time.
It's a waste of turn to get it.
But it is nice in the future when you have them. And I will say, when you're upgrading these meeples to the artisans, you want to be careful, because in a 4-player game, you're going to have 3 meeples to work with. In a 3-player game, you're going to have 4, and I believe in a 2-player game, you're going to have 5 of them. And so if I'm playing a 4-player game and I have all 3 of them upgraded, well, there's no action I'm going to be able to do twice.
Right.
And so you have to be careful, because there may be times where you want to do a space and things have rotated and you want to do that space again. And if you place the smaller meeple there and you wanted to do it later and you have a big artisan meeple, you could still go to that space. But if you don't have the big guy, you can't. But if you went there with the big guy and all you have are big guys, you can't place another one there. So it's a nice push and pull of how you're balancing everything. And a lot of times you may have to take an action that you're not getting to utilize things. The outer ring at times is hard to utilize, and you don't get a benefit like you do when you do the middle 2 rings. In the inner rings, if you don't want to do the action, maybe you don't need to wet clay. You could take a wet clay or a coin, because you don't have anything to make wet again.
Yeah.
But on the outer ring, you don't gain any benefit. And you may have that token already flipped over and not able to use it. Or you may not have the coins to do the specialist statue. So it's I feel like this is, because you're using your coins to do here. So if I have 1 coin left, well, I can pay for this guy, but I couldn't do that. So I have to really balance and use my resources, which are only clay and coins. It's not like you have a bunch of other resources. I like the simplicity in just those 2 resources and how they they play off of each other, and you want to turn it, and you only have one coin, or you want to build a statue, but the only spot you have is 3, and you only have 2. So
Yeah.
I feel like this is the meat of the game. It's just the majority of your score, all your scoring is going to pretty much come over here.
Right.
And so this will be a lot of where to place, but I feel like it's easier for me to place over here than it is for me to take an action.
I will say this. I think Jeremy's right that this is the more constricting part of the game, the more difficult to make work for you. This is easier to make work for you, but I think the decision process of trying to find the most optimal spot to go to is where the meat of this part lies. Because this is a bit of a point salad game. Games are going to range anywhere from 160 to 220 points usually. I mean, it's a pretty high scoring
higher
game.
than I like. Yeah.
So it's a bit of a point salad. You're going to find points on your turn.
Depends on player count, too.
It's really, are you finding the most points you could get that particular turn? And I like that aspect, because if I can manipulate this and work it out to my favor to make something good happen for me, am I finding the best thing that I can find over here? That's really what the question is. And there may be a little bit of AP with that. You may find that this game runs quite a bit long,
depending on who you're playing with.
Yeah,
it can
go
run
a little
longer
bit long
than the 2 hours or whatever.
But for me, it's an enjoyable experience. It's an enjoyable process running through all the options in my head and saying, well, if I go here, then that's going to get me X amount of points. But if I scrap that whole idea and I go with this spot instead, and then I do that there, that's going to get me 2 more points than that before. So I'm going to go with that. Oh, but wait a second. I forgot about this down here. There's just a lot of different layers kind of going on with this game that you do have to kind of keep track of. And as I mentioned earlier,
I will say this: if you're playing the game, and somebody does their turn, touch the wheel. Oh, I'm gonna move. Oh, I changed my mind. I don't want to move it. Oh, your turn's over. You can't take moves back. You've done. You said you were done. I touched the wheel. No, I was thinking about moving it, but I didn't have the coins. So my turn has started. You can't, because people will second guess where they place people.
Yeah.
And they'll, as you're going, people will go, or they'll be looking at certain spots and people will pick. I watch. I read the table. I table talk. I watch. You have to watch certain things. And if people aren't paying attention, you gotta watch other people, and other people may not, but if people are looking at certain spots and making grunts and noises, and you can't have people take. I mean, the game would be way too long if you're letting people take back actions.
You can have it be a problem that once somebody starts moving some things and starts trying to take back some stuff, it can be hard to remember where everything goes.
They'll do things and they didn't have the ability to do that because of
you may want to house rule it that once you start putting a turn in motion, you got to do that turn. You can't take things back. Kind of like Formula D.
It's like a buzzer.
The old Formula D game. Once you start moving your cars on the racetrack, no, that's it. You got to go that way. You can't take it back. And you might have to do that with this game. But it's just, there's a lot of different layers of scoring that you have to keep track of with this game. And that, to me, is a fun experience. It may not be fun for everyone. You may encounter that when you play this game, some people might find it to be frustrating because, well, I completely forgot about the group scoring at the end of the game.
Even as we described it here, it might have been frustrating and hard to follow at times.
And that's where I think the complexity of the game teeters that very fine line between fun and work, that it's a work to have to keep up with all of the things, all the different scoring patterns. But for me, it's on the edge, on the side of, no, this is still fun. I still enjoy it. I still like weighing out my different options. I still like plotting out what I think is going to happen and waiting for the perfect time to put out this person so that I'm the person who has the majority around them, or so that I'm the person that has the majority where the emperors are. I enjoy that aspect of this game and timing it out to work out great. But, also taking the risk that somebody alters this wheel and now I don't have the right choices available to me. I enjoy that whole entire give and take.
I will say, like, I don't find this game to be work. I find it just to be a fun experience, and it's a game. I will say, if you're playing with people that are maybe not as heavy of gamers or been in the hobby near as long, they may have a little bit more trouble. It can be a very reactive game because of how people are changing and taking actions, just like a worker placement can be. One of my friends says that he just doesn't like worker placement. And I think it's because you can get blocked out of things. But I like a tight game. And when we get into thoughts and stuff, I will tell you what makes this a tighter game versus a looser game and things that I think about it. But you have to be reactive. And if you're not a reactive player, the AP is going to go up. I don't feel like I spend too much time where I'm going to place somebody. I can see where people are. I can see where a group is. I can see where I want to connect. I can see what the bonus tiles are and where these potentially could move. Usually they're only going to move 4 spaces max. They usually don't loop the table too much. So you have a pretty good window of where you want to place things before you go. If you're taking a long time at placing, it's just you are having a hard time making your decision on your own. Not that it's necessarily you're missing a spot over here. I feel like if you're not reactive though with the wheel, that's going to be the toughest thing. I wouldn't say focus too much on when you're placing the miniature, because yes, you will get points, but ultimately if you have them in a group, it's going to be fine until things start filling up more. Then it matters more.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
But I think in the beginning...
it's not so important.
Until you get to around 5, maybe the end of 4, it's not super cluttered to where you can't connect.
I feel like these things are super important. But
you can manipulate them.
That's the thing, you can. And so if you strike too early and you load up this row, for instance, and then somebody says, oh, I'm just going to move it here. Boom. Now what are you going to do?
Well, you don't want to load up here early.
No,
I mean, you're going to have quadrant. These don't give you they're going to give you a good amount of points in the beginning. It's not going to make or break the game.
No.
You can have the end has so much of a huge boost in score that you can think you're way behind.
You can overcome
and next
that.
thing you know, you're like right behind somebody, or you may have passed them. And so you do need to focus on where you put miniatures over here. And you do, but if you're getting them connected to groups, you're still in a pretty good spot. And you can still continue to try to get that majority, maybe get a tiebreaker in there. I feel like this is still where you really need to focus, because not being able to do your actions too often really is going to hurt you. And not getting any of these masters on the board, because you're not going to get all 6 usually. No. You'll probably get 3 or 4 because you're using money to spin the change the dial and stuff.
Right.
We didn't talk about turn order, but that's a spot on there, and you'll gain a token. If they don't get taken, they stay in order, or whichever ones don't get taken, they're going to slide in order. Well, I think it's time to just get into the finals.
Get into our final thoughts on this one and our scores. I'll go first and let you guys know this has been one of the best games I've played all year. I very much enjoy this game. From beginning to end, I felt like every decision was a compelling choice. There are some times with this wheel up here where I just have to say, you know what? I don't have a great choice. I'm going to take the one that gives me at least something. There were times where I had to basically say, well, I've already got my crossbow turned over, so that's worthless to me, but maybe I really need the clay, so I'm going to take the clay. And that might seem like a downer that I didn't get a whole lot to do that particular turn, but that's setting me up to do a lot later on. And there's times where you can get really powerful turns, especially with this guy right here letting you do your center ring twice. Mm-hmm. If you get that paired up with the 2 clay builder, you're putting guys out here.
If you have the clay,
yeah, you're going to be getting a lot of points. I like that, being able to make combos happen for you, being able to turn things on a dime, and boom, now I have majority in this row or column or whatever the round bonus is, and you can't do nothing about it because I was the last person to go. That's fun. I really enjoy that aspect. Or maybe I'm the first person and I do it, and now I'm forcing your hand to have to play into that if you want to do that, and so that completely flips your strategy around. I enjoy that aspect of this game. It's a lot of fun being able to weigh out those choices. The only things that I'm not a huge fan of, and I think Jeremy's going to talk about this a bit too, the in-game scoring to me feels like almost like a completely different game. I enjoy the placement, pattern placement of what you're trying to do as far as getting majority in these rows or columns or these round bonuses, or even the way these statues work. I enjoy all of that. Everything going on over here is great. You add on that extra layer of in-game scoring onto it, and it's kind of like, well, how do I do both of these things? It feels like two separate games sometimes, and sometimes maybe it's incompatible. I can't get the row majority right here if I'm still trying to get in the same grouping. And so while that feels disconnected, it's still another layer that I enjoy kind of going through. So it's a con, but it's still an enjoyable con, if that makes sense. So it's not something that ruins the game for me by any means. I still enjoy this game. And it's, like I said, it's been one of the best games I've played all year. I'm going to give this game an 8.6. I really enjoy this one. Okay. It's a very nice game.
So some things I really, really like about this game, as you could tell, is the dial. I am a worker placement guy. I really like the dial, and I've always said when games limit you on what you can do by one or two things because you can't do everything, this is that kind of game where you're always wanting one more clay or one more coin, or one more weapon token, so you can maximize these turns. And occasionally you can get it, but a lot of times you need one more. I really like the dial and how you rotate them in opposite directions, how you can change it. And a lot of times you'll have your thing done ready, and then someone will change it. And sometimes that's good because you wanted to change it, and a lot of times it's bad. So I like reactive things when you have to be reactive, and I really like how the worker placement is done here with this dial. So that's one of my favorite things. Another one is the clay as a resource.
Yeah.
I actually really enjoy the simplicity of the resources here of just money, which, yes, those aren't punched. I don't use those tokens. I have metal coins that I use in the game. I just didn't get them out of the box. So I like the simplicity of clay and coins. And the clay is wet or dry, and you've got to either wet it or keep it wet, or just and build up on the dry. And the way you're using that to create the miniatures. This is fine. This is, I've seen this kind of before, and I like, once you pay for them, you could reuse them again because you've already been taken under their leadership. Over here, I do like this and the miniatures and how you place them. Same with the specialists. I really like the specialists and how they play into it. I like that there's different variety in the 12 tokens that you can do for round scoring. So there's a lot that I really like about this game. The one thing that I'm not hot on, and it's like in a lot of games, is that I don't really like to score 200 points in a game. I mean, I like 75 to 115, maybe 120, 125. But when I'm scoring 150, 200, 220, those different points, I just feel like it's not
too much of a point.
I just feel like I'm getting a bunch of points and I'm not constrained. Even though I am constrained and the game is tight, especially in a 4-player game, I just don't, I don't know, something about me. I get that. I like Tapestry. I like games like that, and I can still like a game if it has high scoring, because Tapestry, you're scoring buku points.
300, 400 points.
But I don't I don't feel, I feel like I accomplish less when everybody's scoring that many points. So
Yeah, I understand
a mental block for me is just scoring that many points and scoring 100 points at the end when doing, in-game scoring and things like that. Because I'd be fine with just ending it how you ended it. You score the specialist and that's it. I understand the grouping and everything. It's okay. I'm fine with getting more points, but it's just something that I prefer to not have so many points. I prefer either a quick race to this many points or 75 to 200.
Yeah, I get that.
I will say I prefer playing this 4-player. I think I only want to play it 4-player because in a 4-player game, you have 3 workers. It's a tighter game. Your choices mean more. I get 3 actions. There's 3 other people at the table that are trying to spoil my plans on building the best army I can and getting my influence into it. And it's less forgiving. And to me, I always say I like a tighter game that's less forgiving. With a 3-player game, you have 4 meeples. First person goes. They get another turn after 2 tries now. So there's more options still on the board. There's less people trying to block. And if 2 of those people couldn't really block an action that they knew that they wanted or kind of limit them over here on the board, then they can do whatever they want again.
Yeah.
First player in a 3-player game is, I'd say get it and keep it as long as you can, because you can do way more.
Yeah.
I personally will probably only break this out if I know I have 4 people. For some of you that like a lower player count and have played that, I think you would still, say that you want to play that. But for me, even if it is going to be a full time length wise, I would prefer the 4 because someone can't run away with it during the game and then you're playing catch up. And if other people aren't helping you, if the other person isn't helping you, try to limit them on where they're playing off of you or getting to do everything they want to, then you're just policing that board and not
being able to
really gaining. You're battling for second and third and somebody's running away because there's less eyes helping to block that. And so I prefer a 4-player game. Like I said, I would probably only play this 4-player personally because there's more people that can watch other people.
Would you play it at 2?
I don't know. Because I think with 2 you're going to have even more points.
That is true.
Because you're not multiplying, but you're able to put more figures. You'll have more of your presence you're getting more.
Yeah.
So I may try it sometime, but I am pretty sure this for me is a sweet spot at 4, probably only. And it's a really good game. My score, I haven't given a score. My score would probably be an 8.4.
Okay. All right.
It's really solid. I'm gonna go 8.5. It's an 8.5. That's not a lot, but usually if you get to that half point marker, you're there. So 8.5 is my score.
Okay.
And it's because there's so many things I really like, but I feel it's limiting me to want to play it 4-player only personally. So I can keep the scores down, I can make it tighter, and it's not like someone just running away. And
I get that.
It's kind of like if I was playing Root and people didn't know how to play.
Maybe it's an 8.5 at 4 players. It's an 8.4 at 3 players.
No, if I was doing 3-player, it'd probably drop to an 8.
Okay, all right.
I like playing 3-player, but the times I played 4-player, it was way more enjoyable.
Okay.
For me, so.
And I think one thing you can say about this game, and maybe it's a pro, maybe it's not a pro, maybe it's a con, is it's a wildly different experience based on the player count.
It is.
4 players is different than 3, and 3 is different from 2. I mean, depending on how many people you have, you're going to experience a completely different game.
And that's the thing is, the only differences in setup really are you only have 3 people instead of 4. So the resources you get to start you just have that 4th player that's not in it, and then you gain 3 meeples instead of 4 in a 3-player game, or a 4-player game, and then 4 instead of 3 in a 3-player game. So that's pretty much the difference in setup. There's not another token here, and you don't need a 3rd place token there. But other than that, it's the same game. And so it's not like it's drastically changing in that sense. It's just changing in how frequently you get a turn, how many figures you can get on the board, the more actions you can do.
Yeah.
So it's going to feel quite a bit different, even though the game is pretty much the same game.
Yeah. Well, there you have it. That's our thoughts on Terracotta Army, not Terracotta Army. It is from Board and Dice. Let's get that box out
Hopefully
here.
edits that out.
I think, by the way, we didn't even mention this. I love the look of the game too. The box art is spectacular.
And that's another reason why my score is high. I am drawn to, I don't know the most politically correct way to say this, so if I offend anybody, I apologize, but I am really drawn to Asian heritage or ideology theme games. So I haven't reviewed Bitoku, but I've played it a few times, and that, to me, I love that game. I have Tang Garden. I have several games that go along with the Asian country theme, so that helps draw it in.
It's a beautiful look.
That's why
to
I
it.
painted it the way I painted it, was based on images and giving it a dusty, sandy kind of look on, but keeping the true color there. So
high quality production all around.
Yep.
So major props to Board and Dice for that. Leave us some comments down below. Let us know what you think about this particular game. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up icon, hit the subscribe button to subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell to be notified of all of our great new content. I'm Lance.
And I'm Jeremy.
And we are Hard to Master, where we take a look at games that are hard to master. We'll see you next time.
See ya.